Shadow Slave. By Guiltythree. Chapter 157, Wind of Change. After that day, things moved with a speed that left Sunny disoriented. It was as though he was being pulled forward by an overpowering current, helpless to slow down or change direction. Before he could react to one change, another would happen, making him feel like he was losing control. Everything was happening so fast that he found it difficult to adjust. It was hard not to fear that, eventually, he would simply be left behind. After that first hunt where Nephis had chosen to give most of the spoils away, she led them on several more. Not all of those hunts went as smoothly, but they did manage to return victorious, if a little battered. Every time, she paid Effie her share of the meat, took a small amount for them to consume, and gave the rest to the people of the outer settlement free of charge. Because of how little their own share was, the group was forced to hunt every other day instead of once or twice a month. Sunny did not understand at all why they were taking on all that unnecessary risk. Provided, he wasn't exposed to many risks himself. Apart from a couple of short battles where Neff and Castor ended up requiring some backup, he spent most of his time with Effie, serving as her scout and slowly learning the ins and outs of the Dark City from her. With the well of knowledge that the unruly huntress possessed and his nimble shadow, the party rarely met anything they weren't ready to face. This gave them an incredible advantage over all other hunting parties of the outer settlement, and even some of Gunlog's own. Soon, their flawless and intense track record earned the cohort reputation and renown. They weren't seen as newcomers anymore. Instead, people considered them to be nothing short of the strongest hunters in the slum. Many even believed that Changing Star and her people were in no way inferior to the hunters of the Bright Castle. Nephis herself was known to be a fearsome fighter ever since her dramatic duel with Andal. Effie had the reputation as one of the outer settlement's best from a long time ago. Handsome and capable Castor quickly won respect and adoration thanks to his amiable personality, noble bearing, and skill. The three of them were considered to be the core of the party, with Cassie and Sunny existing somewhere on the periphery. People loved Cassie because Neff had entrusted her with the responsibility of handing out the free meat. And also because it was nearly impossible not to love this sweet, exquisitely beautiful, and tragic girl. For most of the slum dwellers, she was the welcoming face of the cohort. Sunny, on the other hand. No one really paid him any attention. With no valiant feats of vanquishing monsters of the Dark City under his belt, most considered him to be a mere support member of the party. Inconsequential at best. A charity case at worst. If they even remembered his existence. Sunny was simultaneously happy to live in obscurity and secretly infuriated by this lack of recognition. It was good that no one suspected how powerful he really was. And yet, watching everyone fall over themselves in Castor's presence while completely ignoring his own made Sunny want to kill something. Or someone. Especially because, due to the tactical composition of the cohort, Nephi spent most of her time with the handsome legacy. They seemed to work especially well together. When this frustration threatened to overwhelm Sunny, he would go away, find a quiet corner, and train his katas until every muscle in his body hurt. Usually, the whistle of the midnight shard's blade cutting air was enough to calm him. He trained his swordsmanship day after day, finding strange comfort in it. At least this was something he could control. Of course, Sunny was never entirely relaxed. In fact, with each day, he grew more and more anxious. Because other things were changing as well. After each hunt, Changing Star would provide the dwellers of the slum with free food. At first, they treated her with distrust, then with gratitude, and finally with something akin to reverence. The strange light that Sunny had noticed in their eyes after that first time was slowly growing brighter and brighter. Some people even started jokingly calling her Saint Nephis, as though she was some sort of an angel. However, he felt that these words strangely contained less and less humor with each day. It was really very creepy, not to mention dangerous. The more people looked at Neff like she was their personal savior, the more he feared how drastic Gunlog's reaction would be. If history had shown anything, it was that kings never went easy on meddling messiahs. And throughout all of that, the same question continued to torment Sunny. Was all of this an accident, or had Nephis done it on purpose? As time went by, more and more random people joined their group. They weren't hunters, just forlorn young men and women from the outer settlement who wanted to help. They tended to monster hides that the cohort brought back from the hunts, maintained various tools and gear that needed to be used, assisted Cassie with handing out food, and did other kinds of small but useful things. Soon, the ramshackle lodge was full of them. Sunny didn't even know all of their names. It seemed as though every day, someone new would appear, acting as if they had always been a part of the group. What's worse, not all of them seemed to know who he was, either. No once and not twice, someone would smile at him and ask in a friendly tone, "Are you new?" Of course, bastards never said the same thing to Castor. Sunny felt like he was slowly becoming a stranger in his own home. The feeling was rather unpleasant, not to mention how perfectly it fit all his insecurities. What's worse, these new people really made him uncomfortable. He wasn't really sure of whether they were Changing Star's helpers, or if they were followers. Were they loyal, or devout? One night after a couple of weeks of this, he was suddenly woken by Cassie tugging on his sleeve. The blind girl was whispering, "Sunny, wake up." A moment later, he was already on his feet, ready to summon the midnight shard. A light coming from the other room told him that Neff was awake, too. Gunlog. Did someone betray us? What's wrong? Cassie covered the candle she was holding in her hand and answered in a worried voice, "Something. Something is coming from the road. I've dreamt of it. A nightmare creature." Knowing what had to be done, Sunny simply nodded, gripped her shoulder for reassurance, and walked over to meet Nephi's. Since their lodge was on the edge of the slum, right in front of the entrance of the ancient road, they had no choice but to fight. That night, the three of them, Changing Star, Sunny, and Castor, battled a devil that had wandered up the hill and fought it off before it could reach the outer settlement. When dawn came, terrified people walked out of their hovels on shaking legs and saw the horrible marks left on the white stones by the beast's claws, as well as puddles of blood, both human and that of a monster, steaming in the morning cold. They also saw Changing Star leaning tiredly on her silver sword. Sunny, who was sitting with his back against the wall of the lodge and breathing heavily, was looking at her, too. Back when he was describing to Nephi's why Gunlog could never be defeated, he had told her that every facet of life here was under his control: food, safety, hope, fear, even power itself. Now, Changing Star had given these people food. By protecting the outer settlement, she had given them safety. She had even given them hope. There was also the fear that the inhabitants of the castle felt after Neff had easily beheaded one of their pathfinders. All that remained was power. Finally, the question that pressed heavily on his mind had an answer. No, none of this was a coincidence. Everything that had happened, from choosing the outermost building in the slum as their base to insisting on giving away the food for free, was part of Changing Star's strange but methodical plan. She knew what she was doing all along. But why was she doing all this? What was her ultimate goal? Uneasy, Sunny stared at Nephi's and wondered about the future. Chapter 158, Invisible. After about a month of living in the outer settlement, Sunny woke up one morning with the feeling of not belonging anywhere in this world. This familiar feeling had pursued him for most of his life, and had returned recently after being gone for some time. With a sigh, he rose from his narrow cot and summoned the puppeteer's shroud. The stone lodge was already full of sounds and voices. The tempting smell of breakfast filled the air. Coming out of his small room, Sunny saw a bunch of Neff's helpers rushing here and there, busy with various tasks. Some of them stopped to greet him, others did not. He paid no attention to them and went outside to wash his face and take a look at the sky. The gray sky of the forgotten shore looked as it always did. Nothing ever really changed in this loathsome hell. On his way back, Sunny noticed a gaunt figure standing hesitantly near the doors of the lodge. The ragged young man looked very familiar. Reaching into his memory, Sunny identified him as the friendly, but nervous receptions from the castle. His clothes were much less clean and tidy than they had been before, and his face had become even thinner. The young man had clearly seen better days. What is he doing there? Coming closer, Sunny called out to the young man, Harper, right? How come you're here? Harper flinched, then looked at him with anxious eyes. Oh. Sunless. It's so nice to see you. Sunny stared at him for a while, then asked bluntly, did they kick you out of the castle? Harper's face instantly fell. Lowering his gaze, he stayed silent for a few moments, and then said quietly, I haven't been able to pay the tribute anymore. So. Yes. I guess they did. Then he glanced up, hesitated, and asked in a weak voice, I heard that I can get some food here. Sunny tried to give him a reassuring smile. Sure. Usually, we give out meat after the hunts. But if you're hungry right now, I'm certain there's something we can do. Just talk to a girl with red hair. She's in charge of breakfast, I think. Harper smiled, too, the weak light of hope igniting in his eyes. Really? They will just give me a meal for free. Sunny shrugged. Why not? We have enough food right now. Most of those guys and girls are always here, anyway. They're like guests that won't low. Doesn't matter. They help around, doing this and that, to express their gratitude, I guess. If you feel guilty just eating for free, ask them for some chore. This might not be the bright castle, but you'll see that life here can be not bad as well. Guiding the gaunt young man inside, Sunny directed him toward the kitchen and sighed. Even castle dwellers were now coming to their lodge. If this went on, he would have to share his room with some random stranger. What a joke. Entering the main hall, he noticed Nephi's and Castor standing near the window, discussing the approaching hunt. This morning, there were several hunters from other parties surrounding them. The cohort had been planning a big joint hunt for a while now, and today was the day. Did they just start without me? Hiding his discontent, Sunny walked over to the group of hunters and greeted them. Castor smiled at him, while Nephi simply nodded. The other hunters glanced at the new arrival and didn't pay him much attention. Fools. If you knew who stands before you. Consoling himself with these childish thoughts, Sunny listened to the discussion. One of the hunters was speaking. South of the collapsed lighthouse is a good choice, but the awakened creatures living there have an incredibly sharp hearing. Attacking them in large numbers won't be easy. In the past month, their lodge had gone through a transformation. The remnants of broken furniture were long gone and replaced. Some of the new pieces of furniture came from the ruins, some were made right here by the craftsmen of the outer settlement. There were monster hides and decorations hung on the walls, making the space look neat and presentable. These days, the lodge appeared as the headquarters of a small, but prosperous awakened cohort. There was even a large map of the Dark City on one of the walls, with various symbols marking all kinds of useful information. Currently, the hunter was pointing at a particular spot on the map. This spot right here is much more promising. Blood fiends are known to dwell in these parts. They hibernate during the day, so if we manage to find a lair or two. Castor shook his head. The area you're suggesting is too close to the territory of those strange living statues. We all know how formidable those bizarre creatures are. I still think that south of the lighthouse is better. We just need to think of a way to deceive the hearing of the monsters. Suddenly finding something that he could be helpful with, Sunny said, I have a bell that can. However, his voice drowned in the buzz of the conversation. No one paid attention to his words. Embarrassed, Sunny inhaled deeply, waited for a few seconds, and spoke again. Actually, we can use one of my 2 sound-producing memories too. But right at that moment, Castor seemed to come up with a brilliant idea. Everyone listened to him, turning their backs to Sunny. It was as though he was completely invisible. What? What's even the damn point? Sunny stood there for a minute or two, feeling awkward, angry, and utterly stupid. Then he simply turned around and walked away. Finding his way to the roof of the lodge, he climbed on top of the second-story addition and sat there, solemnly watching as the sun slowly climbed up. After a while, Sunny sighed and closed his eyes, letting the shadow slip back into the building. Just as he had expected, no one even noticed his absence. Not surprised, he sent the shadow around the lodge, watching all the people who were busy making Neff's mysterious plans happen. Everyone seemed full of energy, enthusiasm, and a sense of belonging. Why was he the only one who couldn't fit in? Even that guy from the castle, Harper, had already found some friends. He was currently helping the red-haired girl who was in charge of breakfast wash the dishes. Sunny frowned. Something wasn't quite right with Harper. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the gaunt young man seemed a little off, somehow. Forgetting all about his bad mood, Sunny concentrated on watching the timid sleeper. Harper seemed to do just what any newcomer would do, helping people, learning their names, and asking questions about how things worked in the Changing Stars party. It seemed as though he wanted very badly to stay in the lodge and become useful. Which was understandable. But something was wrong. Sunny's suspicions were confirmed when, about an hour later, Harper left the lodge and went back into the slum. With the shadow stealthily following him from behind, the gaunt young man made sure that no one saw him and hurriedly dove into a secluded alley. Deep in the darkness of that alley, a man was waiting for him. Sunny frowned, recognizing one of the high-ranking guards from the castle. So that's what all this is about. The guard, meanwhile, glared at Harper and asked in a rough, unfriendly tone, "Well?" Harper looked down, his fear and anxiousness apparent. Yes, sir, I've done what you told me. It wasn't very hard." The guard smiled. "Good. It seems that you really do want to return to the castle." Harper glanced up, a desperate light igniting in his eyes. "Really? So? I can return? Even though I don't have any shards to pay the tribute?" The smile disappeared from the guard's face. "You will be able to return after you gather all the information that I told you to learn. If you do, I'll invite you inside myself. No need to even worry about the tribute. But remember, I need to know everything about the core members of the cohort, including St. Nephi's herself. Their aspects, their abilities, their flaws. I even want to know what hand they use to wipe. Understand?" Harper paled. "But, sir, things like that. It won't be easy to learn them. Especially for a simple servant like me." The guard frowned. "Didn't you say that you knew 2 of the cohort members already? This is why I gave you this chance to begin with. Did you lie to me, boy?" The gaunt young man flinched. No, I do know them. I actually spoke with Lady Changing Star's scout already. He is a friend of mine." A wide, menacing smile appeared on the guard's face. What's the problem? Just get that fool talking. Rats like him will tell you everything as long as you pay them a little attention, believe me. I'm willing to bet that this useless freeloader is walking around full of jealousy and delusions of grandeur. Pretend to respect him even a little, and he won't be able to shut up." Ouch. Harper nodded, then suddenly hesitated. After a few moments of silence, he asked in a timid voice, "Sir, you won't hurt them, will you? They are good people." The guard stared at him for a second or two, then said in a dark, mocking tone, "Why do you ask if you already know the answer?" Hearing those words, Harper deflated. His face darkened, and he lowered his head, as though ashamed to look straight. However, he didn't object. That bastard. Just wait and see. Sunny was already planning the beating he was going to give the cowardly young man before throwing him out of the lodge, but at that moment, a voice called out for him. It was Effie. "Hey, doofus. Are you asleep? Come down, the hunt is starting." Torn away from the shadow's perspective, Sunny threw a dark glance at the tall huntress, called his shadow back, and sighed. I'll deal with him after we return, but by the time he returned, Sunny was in no state to deal with anything. Chapter 159, Revelation. Despite all his misgivings and unease, Sunny had never expected that this hunt was going to change everything. He was just going through the motions, somewhat on edge because of the scale of this joint operation, but also strangely reassured by the large number of hunters surrounding him. The unusual hunting party left the outer settlement at noon, heading east, to the massive ruin of a collapsed lighthouse that was situated at the edge of the city. There were almost 20 of them gathered together, all carefully making their way through the deadly maze of narrow streets, with Effie serving as the chief pathfinder and Sunny helping her by scouting ahead. The plan was as straightforward and simple as possible. However, nothing was really ever safe in the dark city. Everyone was prepared for the worst. And pretty soon, their fears came true. Halfway to their destination, a sudden sound made Effie freeze in place. Raising a fist to signal everyone to stop, she peered into the fog, a dark and foreboding expression on her face. Feeling that something bad was about to happen, Sunny commanded his shadow to return and moved closer to Cassie. His hand was ready to grasp the hilt of the midnight shard out of the air. For a few moments, everything was quiet. Then, Effie's pupils suddenly widened. Scatter. As soon as the word left her mouth, the experienced hunters dashed in different directions. Sunny himself grabbed Cassie and lunged to the side, dragging her along with him. Then, something large and heavy crashed from above into the cobblestones where the sleepers had been standing just a second ago. Luckily, most of them were already somewhere else due to Effie's timely warning. However, a couple of people were a little late to react. Their screams drowned in the sickening sound of tearing flesh. Sonny cursed. His shadow was nowhere near yet, leaving him with no choice but to fight without its aid. He spun around, summoning the Midnight Shard, and froze for a fraction of a second, all blood draining from his face. Out there in the middle of the street, a massive, winged creature was standing on the cracked cobblestones, its pale body and black feather stained by the blood of the unfortunate hunters. Its terrifying beak was open, revealing rows of sharp, needle-like fangs. A spire messenger. As Sonny watched, momentarily paralyzed by fear, a long red tongue snaked out of the creature's maw to lick the blood off its face. Move. Shaking off the paralysis, Sonny gripped his sword and prepared to fight for his life. His and Cassie's. After that, everything happened incredibly fast, but also felt like an eternity. The hunters had a simple choice to make: either separate into smaller groups and retreat into the ruins, risking encountering something equally as or even more terrifying, or stand their ground and try to drive the fallen beast away. Without having to discuss it, everyone chose the second option. No matter how dangerous, a familiar enemy was always better than the unknown. Unknown. The surviving hunters attacked the abomination with all they had. Even though their memories had no chance of breaking through the skin of the terrible creature, each strike still hurt it. Those who had aspect abilities capable of dealing direct damage immediately used them, hoping to at least disorient the beast. Of course, no ability of a sleeper could ever hope to wound a fallen beast. However, if their assault was ferocious enough, the messenger could retreat to search for easier prey. If it only made the abomination angrier, however, most of them were going to die. More than anything, trying to resist creatures of this rank was nothing but a gamble. For several seconds, it wasn't clear which way the situation would turn. The messenger easily shrugged off the rain of attacks and lashed out with its beak, piercing one of the hunters clean through despite the man's mighty build and heavy armor. Another was almost torn apart by terrifying talons, but at the last second, Castor managed to pull the young man away thanks to his incredible speed. Sonny waited at the back, covering Cassie and praying that his shadow would come back in time to give him a chance of dealing damage to the damned creature. But in the end, it was Effie who dealt the decisive blow. Summoning her weapon, she leaped forward. Sonny could see her lean, powerful muscles moving like wire ropes under the olive skin. As though turning into a spring, her whole body tensed, and then exploded with momentum. There was enough force behind her attack to split a mountain apart. Miraculously, the tip of her weapon managed to break the pale hide on the messenger's chest and stab deep, causing a stream of blood to shoot out. The creature screamed, and then lashed out with its powerful paws at the huntress. A large round shield appeared on Effie's left hand. Digging the soles of her sandals into the ground, she leaned forward and received the terrifying blow. The cobblestones under her feet cracked, but the huntress remained standing. Spitting a mouthful of blood, she grinned crazily and twisted her weapon, causing more damage and pain to the messenger. It seemed as if the fallen beast did not expect to meet such fierce resistance from a bunch of ants, not to mention actually being hurt by them. Letting out another scream, it waved its wings to send the sleepers flying back, picked up the dead hunters, and jumped into the air. Soon, the abomination turned into a dark spot in the skies. All that remained behind were puddles of blood, broken stones, and the moans of battered humans. Somehow, they had survived. Well, most of them. Effie straightened, dismissed her shield, and glanced down. Damn. I think my arm is broken. With blood running down her chin, the huntress laughed and leaned on her weapon, visibly exhausted. Sonny wanted to congratulate her on that awesome strike, but then, something registered in his mind. Suddenly cold, he stared at Effie's weapon. He had never seen her fight before, so this was the first time Sonny saw what memory the huntress used in battle. It was a spear. An ancient, beautiful spear forged from bronze. Something clicked in his mind, disparate pieces of information connecting together. And then, everything exploded. Or at least it felt that way. Because Sonny finally understood the future.